much at this juncture because you need to hear from our panelists. Our concept and idea with this is to let you hear the commitment from our gaming industry folks towards responsible gaming and to help the direction of help for patrons that may get in trouble. They are not the enemy. It's a legal business. It's well-run businesses, and they are as concerned about folks who have addictions and abusing their premises as more, at least as much as anybody else. So what should, they don't have horns and tails, and they are going to talk to you about how they might be able to help and have partnerships, and we'll kind of explore that, and we'll have plenty of time for you guys to ask questions that you may want to possess. And I will start, I will just go down the line. Patrick Malarkey from Caesars of Southern Indiana. He works in customer relations and some other aspects there. Patrick, if you have some introductory comments or anything that you'd like to share at the top of the presentation.
Sure, yeah. My name's Patrick. Current role at Caesars Southern Indiana, Caesars Rewards and VIP manager. Worn a lot of different hats there and started actually in Las Vegas. I worked at 3 different properties in Vegas before corporate, before coming out here. I've been a service leader on property, as you said, kind of responsible for the guest communication part of it, dealing with a lot of their concerns and issues. Been a responsible gaming chairperson for our property, kind of spearheading a lot of our process and making sure that we're adhering to the codes that we promised to commit to, certainly, and hopefully go beyond. So I've been a part of the community now for 12 years. I guess it was about 12 years ago I moved here from Las Vegas, and it's been a great experience, and more than happy once we get through the introductions to talk about what we're doing.
Next up, Chip, you want to?
Sure. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name's Chip Polston. I serve as Senior Vice President of Communications, PR, and Social Responsibility for the Kentucky Lottery Corporation. Been there for almost 18 years now. 10 years prior to that, I worked as the good night and good luck guy. I used to host the televised nightly drawings when we had the balls and machines and all that sort of thing. And a story that I'll probably relate back to you all a little later when it's a little more appropriate is through that role of going out on the road and hosting drawings and doing that, I came face to face to what the disorder looks like, and it very much altered my perception of what I do for a living and how I wanted to try to make sure that my coworkers knew what to do when they were put into a difficult situation. I've been a board member for 18 years with the Kentucky Council on Problem Gambling. I spent 6 years on the National Council on Problem Gambling's board of directors, 1 year as vice chair, and also spent 5 years on the World Lottery Association's Responsible Gambling Work Group, which was part of the WLA that had representatives from each continent to set lottery responsible gambling policy for the global industry. So I've enjoyed my time doing it and look forward to being able to hopefully sharing some insights with you all today.
And at the end is Jeff Inman. Jeff?
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I'm not quite sure. I have been in gaming for a number of years. I have been with Laguna Development Corporation for the last 18, filling a number of corporate positions. I've been here since 2019. I'm the corporate general manager for Ellis Entertainment and for the Ellis Park property in particular. Throughout my career, I've served on a number of responsible gaming committees and boards for Harris and for Laguna Development Corporation, and as well for Ellis Entertainment. Obviously, we're taking the lead there. Mike reached out to me when we first landed in Henderson, and we began a relationship, and we've continued to work forward. I know it's of great interest to everybody that Ellis Park is opening a facility here in Owensboro. Afterwards, I'd be more than happy to answer some questions, but right now our concern is to continue to work with Mike and make sure that when we open this facility, we partner well with problem gambling resource providers and make sure that we're available and our staff is trained to offer assistance and to intercede when we have the opportunity to do so.
Good. Patrick, what's the corporate and your facility commitment towards responsible gaming?
Yeah, so maybe even a better way to answer that is kind of describe our process a little bit. So essentially what it comes down to, our commitment, right? Anyone who is not, choose your words, capable, shouldn't be in the facility, you know, quite frankly, we don't want them there. You know, it sounds, be honest, kind of a crass line, but, you know, for the person that doesn't have the $100 to gamble, we don't want their $100. Our $100 isn't going to affect our bottom line. I know a lot of times there's this idea about the industry of we want every last penny that we can get, and to be quite frank, no, we don't. If that's more important to them to be able to do the things that they need to do, we don't need that money. We are not in a position to try and bleed every penny dry from someone. That is not a part of what we do. So we stand very much behind our code of commitment to our community, to our employees, as well, in that, you know, when we see that there is an issue and a problem, we have responsible gaming ambassadors across the entire property to be able to kind of step in and start asking at least some extra questions. You know, it does require the guest to come along with and recognize that there is an issue that they want help with. But, I mean, we're certainly more than happy and on many occasions have that conversation with the guest. Is everything okay? Is there anything we can help with? And then eventually when it goes down the road to the exclusion program, we have an exclusion program throughout the entire Caesars company. We are about 60 properties deep right now, and if you're excluded from one, you're excluded from all. If you can't gamble at one, there's no reason to allow you to gamble at any of the other ones, because if you have an issue, we want you to work on that issue. So, yeah, we get them through the process. We go through our exclusion program. We make sure they understand what it entails. Right now, similar to the state exclusion for Indiana, because we're based in Indiana, they have the options of a 1-year, a 5-year, or a lifetime exclusion. And once they sign that, we are on top of that. Now, if you sign a 1-year, it doesn't mean after 1 year you're automatically coming back. I'm probably not telling you things you don't know already, but right, if you sign a 1 year, it's not, hey, 1 year's done, please come back. There is still a process to get them, you know, signed back on to be able to come and play with us. But we hold to that. If someone signs for a 5-year and 2 years later they're coming back, hey, I feel good, you know, I'm sorry. Like, we thought this was a serious enough issue. That, you know, we've committed to this and we're going to continue to commit to that.
Okay. Chip, I know the lottery's had a long time commitment from the top down on commitment to responsible gaming. Would you elaborate, please?
Well, a lot of that launched really due to the efforts of my friend Dr. Kurt Barrett, who's here, where Dr. Barrett, along with folks at Churchill, got together with the lottery to really make this organization happen, to get everything off the ground here. Our lottery director at the time was a gentleman by the name of Arch Gleason, who used to somewhat kiddingly chalk it up to what he called good old-fashioned Catholic guilt. But Arch was literally the first lottery director in America that said, this is something that we need to talk about. And Arch used to tell me that when he would try to have this conversation with other lottery directors, he would be cautioned, you're giving ammunition to the other side. Arch didn't comprehend what the other side of that equation was. And he set out to really change the thinking of the industry to where really in the last 6 years or so, it's been a remarkable transformation in the industry. Not only has the industry embraced responsible gambling measures, but it's widely celebrated. And even from a staffing perspective, I look at the Hoosier Lottery. They have 2 full-time positions and half of another position who are solely dedicated to their responsible gambling program and making sure that they're doing what they need to do. So it came from us operating in a vacuum to where we tutored and worked along and mentored a lot of states in their early operations. I was fortunate enough to write the first responsible gambling standard for the U.S. lottery industry that helped guide a lot of those the folks to where they needed to be and doing what we needed to here at home. You folks who are local here in Owensboro who work with the River Valley organization, the 1-800-GAMBLER hotline is the crux of our operation in terms of making sure people get information to be able to call that number if they need help or insight. When we launched sales via the internet about 6-7 years ago, I'm guessing at this point, we teamed with River Valley along with the National Council on Problem Gambling to be able to expand that 1-800-GAMBLER hotline to a text and chat capability. We underwrite that every year and pay for that because since we were going into that digital realm, we wanted to be sure that people had the opportunity to reach out to us via that platform, or to reach out to experts rather via that platform to get the help that they needed. We hold the highest industry certifications possible through both the National Council on Problem Gambling as well as the North American Association of State and Provincial Lotteries, and it's an ongoing effort. It's not done in a vacuum. We are constantly looking at areas where we can improve and have appreciated the work that we've been able to do, not only with the council, but with River Valley to make that happen.
Jeff, what's the corporate and the local commitment to responsible gaming?
Well, LDC has a very strong commitment. Going to New Mexico, we're a strong supporter of the New Mexico Problem Gambling Foundation. We provide funds for the television advertising, for outreach. We make sure that our employees are trained on an annual basis. And I have to say, one of the first places I worked was LDC, who suddenly realized that probably if we're focusing to that point, the ugly little secret is gaming workers often have problem gaming issues. And we were one of the first organizations to admit that we needed to do outreach to our own staff and not ignore the fact that it happens. We continue to work through, we continue to refine our products. When we've got here, I mean, this is where with racing, the gaming portion of it, we're well aware of. There's points where we can offer information to a customer. Areas such as ATMs and player kiosks and cages where we can make sure that we have the availability and we have trained employees to make sure if somebody's in crisis, we can intercede and get them the care they want. Racing has been, frankly for me, racing has been a more challenging area just because of the breadth in the area. You don't have those points where you do in a gaming casino where you have those narrow areas where you can intercede with somebody. When you're talking where we have 200 acres or we have 150 acres available to our customers, it becomes much more interesting to try to find a way to find somebody in crisis and give them the information they need. And that's really where we're working right now. We will continue to make sure that we have information available in the new property, and it'll be a lot easier to manage. But we continue to work to refine our game so that we can do the job we need to in this area. Pardon me.
I'm curious, and I think the folks in the room might know, are there ways that clinicians can help or can work or build partnerships with your businesses? Patrick, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, I think almost just from Rosalind's previous, more of it I think comes from an understanding of the history. One of the things I think that the point that she got across great is that it's not about the money, it is about the experience. And I'll be honest, that's something even us in the industry I think was probably a little slow to come around to. That I think we're getting better at recognizing that and understanding that, but using that understanding to be able to help the guest through essentially the experience, why they're looking for the experience, why they're chasing that experience. I think that's, as far as the people that you guys are going to be interacting with, I think that part of an understanding, both from their perspective, our perspective, is probably the most helpful thing that we find.
And I would say it's really two things. It's communication and it's perception. Communication from the standpoint, Rosalind is a great example. She's a phone call away. And steps in immediately. If we've got somebody that needs to speak with a counselor and needs to speak with somebody, I've called her numerous times and literally given her a phone number, and she's immediately on it. So that communication is key. And it's two ways, and that we want to hear from you all as well, in terms of situations that you encounter and ways that you think that we may be able to do something differently. And Mike, the perception component of it, Mike kind of kidded about it a little bit at the beginning, but it really is the reality of the situation. We're not the enemy. I know that can be difficult to process sometimes with the stories that you hear about the effects that some of our industries have inadvertently had on people. But the analogy that I always use, especially with new employees, I work with some great people who have big hearts and want to do the right thing. And none of us get out of bed in the morning with the express intent of causing harm to anyone. But by the nature of what we do, there is a percentage of the population that is going to have a problem with it. And it's our job to attempt to minimize that as best we can and get them the help that they need. So please know that that's the way that we really do look at this. And we want to hear from you and things that we could do differently or areas that you think that we could improve to better meet the needs of your clients and the people that you all speak with.
I think we feel very much the same way. We don't want everybody's last nickel. I don't want, and we don't want somebody's rent payment or their car payment or their grocery money. And frankly, I have personally interceded a number of times when I've heard somebody say that to pull them aside and say, hey, look, I don't want your rent payment. Why don't you go home and take a break? Where the tie-in with the local community is to give us the access to our tool belt, to have those resources to give that person someplace to go and give them an option to seek treatment. And that's where I see the golden window is for that, is to train the employees. I have been in gaming since the 80s, and I've seen the first few clumsy attempts at responsible gaming, and sometimes they were mismanaged on the gaming operations part. Well-meaning, but I mean, at first we had sent out a bunch of amateur therapists, and the results were astoundingly bad. And now we've learned there's only so much we can do. But what we can do well, and to make sure that people know where they can go. And being that voice that says to a customer, hey, look, I know a few people that, that you can talk to that can help you. It really does help us a lot to do our job, because we don't want that money. And that is, people should be treating us as entertainment like they do if they go to a concert or a football game. That's what they should be treating that as. And when it grows past that, we need to see that we get those people the help they need.
You all employ different kinds of messaging in regarding to responsible gaming, whether it's on-site in a brick-and-mortar location, whether it's online. Can you elaborate a little bit on what is your responsible gaming messaging that you guys use?
Yeah, so at the casino, few different ways we try and get similar messages across. Kind of our three main messages. There is kind of the true, like as we think about it, responsible gaming message. There's the unattended children, and then there's the Project 21 of trying to make sure that we're keeping underage kids out of the casino. And those messages are going to be delivered in quite a few different ways. We've got at every entrance point something speaking to that on the TVs throughout the casino. We'll have that message rolling through between some of the advertisements on the TVs that we have. Any communication that we send out, we have our at the bottom the number to contact if they feel like they have a problem. So we try and give all the ATMs, all the machines where you can redeem your offers. We try and have that message at a point where we can know that everyone's going to go, so that at least in one point or another, there is going to be that information there and readily available for them. So yeah, we try and put it wherever they're going to be, quite frankly.
And from the lottery's perspective, our messaging is built around our Play Responsibly program. There has been some interesting research in the last couple of years about the efficacy of that message. What does play responsibly mean, and what are you telling people? And we're taking a look at where we want to go with that. It's a bit of a double-edged sword for us because we've got the efficacy of it also stacked up against the fact that we've got 2 years of brand investment, or 2 decades rather, of brand investment with that. For 20 years, that's been our logo, that's been our messaging. So how far away do we want to step from that? There is an interesting program from Atlantic Canada Lottery called GameSense. We have acquired a license for the GameSense program, and GameSense primarily is built around this concept of use your game sense. Not so much telling you to play responsibly, but use your game sense when you're participating in something. How to be responsible, set a budget, knowing the warning signs to look for, and there's some really good marketing and information materials around that. Canadian lotteries operate very differently from U.S. lotteries, so translating from one continent to the other has been a little bit challenging. But the play responsibly messaging is the crux of what we do. It's printed on every single ticket that we sell. It is by agreement with the retailer to be displayed on their play center and to have information in every single retail outlet. If there is one that's not doing that, I'm confident that I'll hear from Dr. Barrett with a location to let me know of where that is when he sees one that's not there, and I do appreciate you doing that, so thank you. Because we want to know if it's not somewhere where it needs to be. And it's tagged on all of our TV commercials, it's on our radio spots, it's pretty well everywhere we can put it. All print material that comes out of the Kentucky Lottery has to have that Play Responsibly logo on there. We redesigned the logo several years ago to lend more prominence to the 1-800-GAMBLER number, so that number, if the real estate and the footprint of the logo isn't as large as we would want it to be, then you can still see that number and know that that's where you can call from there. But again, we've got a couple decades of investment with that Play Responsibly messaging. It does have high recognition in the field from our players because we ask them about that on a quarterly basis through our quarterly tracking surveys. So they're aware of that, and while we want to keep that going, we know that there are some other areas we can look at that there as well.
I mean, as far as Ellis Park here in Kentucky, working with the Kentucky Council of Problem Gambling, I will tell you that we have been working toward messaging. When I first got here, there was very minimal messaging for problem gambling. It was getting those areas into critical areas. It was partnering as well with our regulators regarding making sure that we have a robust self-exclusion policy that is uniformly enforced. And I do see there's some legislation that I support regarding making sure that all the tracks and outlets in Kentucky communicate that information. So if somebody self-excludes, they self-exclude from all. I think that's having that database together will be incredibly important for us as we move forward. And also tying in with the integrity hotline, because as far with racing and the rest of it, integrity does tie in. And for us, there is the background item with racing. If we exclude somebody from entering a racetrack, we're also excluding them from being able to have a Kentucky racing license. So for some people, a permanent exclusion could result in them losing their employment. So sometimes we have to play a more delicate game in making sure those people get the help they need.
And to follow up on that with that self-exclusion is really kind of the holy grail of the lottery industry right now. Everybody wants to do it, but nobody knows how. When you look at where these gentlemen are, the points of entry into a facility are limited. We have 3,200 points of entry from Paducah to Pikeville and all points in between. You don't give anybody your driver's license or identification when you buy a lottery ticket. How do you do it? And there are some states that I appreciate their efforts. They feel a little ham-handed to me. Because the only point at which you could potentially track a player is once they have a win in excess of $601, at which point it becomes reportable to the feds for tax purposes. So what do you do there with it? So that self-exclusion and ways to be able to approach that in the lottery industry is something that we've all looked at. When Iowa was the first state in the U.S. where their lottery actually implemented a self-exclusion program, I remember coming to Mike and having some conversations about it, and it just it wasn't workable. It really wasn't going to, and Mike concurred with that opinion, that it was a nice effort. It made for some great public relations, But did it really do what you wanted it to do? It didn't appear to, and nobody has been able to quite figure that out, and I hope at some point we're able to get a better idea on it. Now, what we have been able to do, we sell tickets and games via the internet, and that we can throttle. That's why I've often said that in my perspective, our internet selling basis is actually more responsible than a retail selling basis because we can control access. We can control who's on there. We can control how much money they deposit into their account. You can't do that at retail. So from a self-exclusion component, from the internet, yes, we can do it, and it does work. And we have people who, as I'm sure the other gambling organizations in the state have, that self-exclude and want back in the game, that we have to have some very difficult conversations with to let them know that that's not going to happen. There was a lovely older lady several years ago who convinced herself that if she just told me how much that Jesus loved me, that I would let her gamble again. And that, no, we weren't going to do that.
But Jesus does love you.
I hope that he does, thank you. She told me numerous times that he did, and in her view, he'd probably love me more if I let her back on. But from an internet perspective, there is a whole different range of issues that you run into there, but from the lottery industry perspective, we can throttle and control access to that, and to me, that's one of the benefits of that channel. Yes.
Just follow up,
Go ahead.
You do have exclusion for Kentucky Lottery?
Yes, we, for when you go onto our website to be able to play there, right.
Is there a possibility that a person could, I realize you got all the locations, you can't possibly exclude people from 60,000 locations, but if a person, let's say we're in Louisville and they bought lottery at a particular location, could they be excluded from that location? Of course, I know there's problems with that, depending, you've got so many merchants and so many.
It's not, the core of it really, Mike, is identification. When you buy a lottery ticket, it's an anonymous transaction.
Yeah.
We don't get your name, we don't get your phone number, we don't, if you buy a $1 ticket, we don't get your social security number.
You know me, you've seen me, and I come in every day.
Right.
Buy lottery tickets. And I say, I don't want you to ever sell, because I drink a lot too.
Right.
And sometimes when I drink, I want to go get a lottery ticket. So when you see me show up at your counter, please do not sell me a lottery ticket, even though I hand you the money.
Right.
Is there a way that you could self-exclude on that kind of basis?
You would hope that retailers will do the right thing there, but then when you want that other ticket, all you have to do is get in your car and drive 200 yards away. That's the issue. So, and that's what folks have not been able to really get past in that perspective.
If I'm a merchant and I'm compassionate about people that have problems. I see the same person coming in every day, and I know they can't afford to pay their rent. They're using they come in early in the month when they get their check.
Yep.
And they use all their money on lottery. And I'm sympathetic with the fact that they're struggling. And they're even asking me, don't sell me lottery tickets, especially if you notice that I'm drinking.
Right. There are
Is there a way I could say,
Sure.
I'm not selling it to you and not being, difficulty with my
Right.
management, saying, hey, you're here to sell lottery tickets, not to social work people.
Some of the I'd say a good number of the references that I get from folks wanting more information about our program comes from exactly that. They come from retailers who know their customers, they see people that are in there, they want to be able to help them, and they just don't know how. So we work with them to make sure that they've got the knowledge of how to have that conversation with someone. We also worked with NASPL, our North American Trade Group, to put together retailer training. So there is a short retailer training module. Every one of our sales reps is in each store in their territory on about a 2 to 3 week rotation. They have iPads, wireless iPads that they carry with them. They have sales, other information about that retailer. The training information is right there. So when a retailer asks the rep a question, I've got this customer and I don't know what to do, it's a quick hit that they can go through and kind of give them the guidance on what to do there. Retailers, for the most part, are pretty compassionate to that. And a lot of the stories that I've gotten have been to try to help people. To what was said earlier, we also get stories about retail employees that have problems that we have to try to help them navigate with as well. So You want retailers to do the right thing. You want to give them the tools that they need. But again, with 3,400 points of entry across the state, it can make it difficult to get something that could really work. We could do a PR campaign and make it look really good, but we have a standard that we expect for things to be able to work that we would want it to be able to adhere to.
Go ahead.
Chip, I think it would help this group if you mentioned one of what I think is your greatest obstacles to almost any kind of play responsible thing, and that is the very high rate of turnover that you have in your outlets. You have thousands of outlets, but you also have probably 3 times that many people per year.
That's a great point. The average annual turnover in the convenience store industry is in excess of 100%. Retail employees at the C-store level that last for more than a year are a bit of a unicorn. There aren't a whole lot of them. Then you layer that on top of the fact that English is a second language to a lot of our retailers. And so then it becomes a communication perspective. It also is a cultural perspective to a lot of the folks that are retailers there. So there are a number of obstacles when dealing with that, Dr. Barrett. You are correct that you do try to address. You look to get the information as widely dispersed as you can and in front of as many people as you can. Some of our larger chain accounts that do bulk training, if you will, for C-store employees on not only how to sell lottery, also do some responsible gambling training along with retailers there. That's more at the large chain account, but when it comes to that mom and pop that's down on the corner, if they can keep an employee for more than a year, it's a rarity.
And the training decay is just a major factor. And it also works with our council. We come up with these ideas, and then we encounter reality.
Right.
And the sort of things that come quickly to your mind just won't work. Mm-hmm. And I know you've been bloodied with that many times.
Right. Well, as an industry, for example, some of the first training materials that we produced for use at retail were in excess of 25 minutes long. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen at a C-store location where it's rapid. You want people in, you want people out. There's people at the gas pumps. There's people in your store. There's so many things going on. In a perfect world, could you sit those employees down every 3 months and go through a 30-minute long presentation with them? Absolutely. When the rubber meets the road, it can't happen. It does not happen in the business sense. So you pivot and you navigate with the hand that you're dealt as best you can.
I think as a therapist, when we're dealing with that family that's under extreme distress, and we wonder if it's even going to survive, we keep looking, how come you're not doing something? Well, that's a reality that we don't have to deal with, but you do.
Right.
Jeremy, do you have a question?
It's actually directed to Jeff and Patrick. Chip made mention that they have an option for self-exclusion from the fun club where they can essentially deactivate their account for a period of time. But as it stands right now, from what I could see, for Caesars and Ellis Park, in order for you to be self-excluded, you still have to physically go in, you have to fill out a form and stuff. And in certain cases, it's during a specific period of time. I think for yours it's 8 to 4:15 or something. Is there any kind of movement, especially not just considering the pandemic, but to prevent any kind of re-triggering or re-engagement in that type of problem behavior to transition or provide an option for someone to be self-excluded and complete that form online?
I would say for our property and our business, probably not. And one of the main reasons for that, we know that some families like to get involved, and most of the time that is great, and they're doing so with the best intentions. But we also know that there are families and spouses who do so with not the best intention. And how we would be able to do that with a way of verifying that the person who's doing it is in fact the person doing it. I'm just not sure we're there to be able to confirm that. So that's why we do it in person. Now we are 24 hours. It does mean you have to come in, which is a burden, absolutely. But that's why we want it in person, because we want the signature, we want the direct verification of, you understand what this means, we want to make sure, yeah.
And I think as far as our specific timeframe, I think that, I will be honest, my director of risk management comes in, we sit down and go over this once a week. Most of our events happen in the evening. We do ask that the person is there in person. I will say to lift, to come back and ask to be lift or be reinstated, you do have to come in between that narrow time frame. But to ask to be, we will do it anytime, and most of them do happen after hours, or early morning, late evening. We'll do it whenever. Fortunately, we hired a new risk safety director, and he's as interested in responsible gaming and self-exclusion as I am. So we've been taking a much more open stance toward making sure we give people those options 24 hours a day.
I did have one more follow-up question to that, and that's for individuals that do engage in self-exclusion and stuff like that. In many cases, insurance does have an issue paying for gambling addiction therapy and stuff. Is that something that facilities such as yours would be willing to help sponsor or help pay for these individuals that wind up running into these problems, that need the treatment and help?
I am not kidding. We actually had this discussion yesterday. We knew we were coming in the HR and security, risk management. We were talking about this. How do we get counseling services to our customers? We have a robust system for our employees, but it seems like we can do more to get those connections and make sure those people get that help. Yes.
And Jeremy, from the lottery perspective, to answer that, as Dr. Barrett and Mike know so well, it would require, we have advocated for legislation for more than 2 decades to allow us the ability to do that. But via state law, we can't do that. We have to get legislative approval to be able to do it. And we have advocated literally for decades through the standalone legislation that the council has put forth to be able to provide support like that. The hope is that, as was discussed yesterday with current legislation in Frankfurt, that we can finally get something across the finish line there to be able to do. But that's something when we go through those certification programs with outside entities that will tell them that legislatively we are prohibited from doing that, especially when I talk to the folks in the UK, they'll be like, well, change that. Fix that. Why can't you fix that? What do you mean you can't do that? And they don't understand, as a state agency, the restrictions that we are under, as a quasi-governmental agency actually through the state. But we hope to be in that position at some point.
Rosalind, you had someone sent a question in?
Yes, a virtual attendee has a question for you, Jeff.
Yes.
What exactly will we be expecting to come to Owensboro in the mall? And what safety protocols are you putting into place for those who end up having problems?
So we shall have we'll have about a 600 unit HHR facility with a simulcast horse wagering area and a restaurant and bar. I will tell you that per Kentucky, we limit points of entrance. So anybody that comes into one of our facilities, as far as in Kentucky, you have to go past a security officer, and then we have some recognition cameras. We swipe IDs. We will have a robust notification system, the same as was brought up before, as far as letting people know where they can get help. We have annual training for our staff to have them recognize and how to discreetly allow a guest who may have a problem to seek help. And again, if somebody does self-exclude, especially with those limited points, that's the easiest way for us to spot. That employees and guests come in 1 or 2 places, so we have a good way of identifying people when they come in. As I was saying before, in the racetrack, Chip has the same issue with 6,000 outlets. With our gaming facility, we have limited outlets, but when you're actually out just standing at the track and we have 3,000 to 5,000 people coming in a day, I'd like to tell you we were perfect with it, but it's easy to get lost in a crowd. But we will have a very good standard when we come in. And again, there will be 1 or 2 ways to enter or exit the facility, and both of those will be manned with a security officer.
Yes, sir.
Will you be doing the training with in-house personnel, or are you going to contract that outside?
We haven't made that determination yet. We have done it. We normally have a trained staff that does that. I will tell you, we do not have somebody trained in problem gaming on our Ellis staff right now. We have utilized our LDC staff and then done online refreshers to keep people up to date. You make a good point, and I'd love to talk about that later.
Some of the in-house places in the industry across the board in other states have used in-house people, but they had no training in compulsive gambling themselves. And so that was a problem. They were trying to teach something they didn't know, and so often they would go to the internet and then just recite what was ever on there, and they had no experience as gamblers themselves.
You bring up a good point, because LDC does have people who are trained and do work and are certified to do it. But here on Ellis, I will tell you right now, we do not, and we realize that is a need for us. And we'd love to work with you and work here to make sure that we're doing what needs to be done in Kentucky. New Mexico as well is a little bit, we need to change the messaging a little. It is focused towards some of the more at-risk populations in New Mexico, a southwestern state. And things are a little bit different here. So I do think I'd love to partner and tweak our messaging a little bit and make it sure appropriate for the area of the country that we're in.
The resources are here, and so they're available to you.
Mike, you got a,
Yeah, I just was curious with all the online, whether it's casinos or the lottery, what is the procedure for verification of age, the person who is applying, and they could be underage, and how do you determine whether the person is of a legal age?
So there's a process we have, KYC, Know Your Customer. Signing up to play on our website is not like signing up for an Amazon account. It's not like signing into your Netflix account. And that is by design, Mike, for exactly what you talked about. We do identity verification of everybody that is allowed onto the site to be able to gamble. The way that we do that through age verification is we have to, when you sign up for an account, we get the last 4 digits of your social security number. We get other personally identifiable information where we go out to make sure that you are who you say that you are, to be able to identify folks there. For somebody to circumvent that, they would need to have an incredible amount of PII on someone to be able to sign up for someone else to an account, and I think that would probably indicate there's a lot of other issues going on in a situation like that. But you do have to have a tremendous amount. And as a result, it's not easy to get on. We do have a decline rate from folks who are legitimately trying to get on the site that we will turn down because there's something out of whack. There's maybe, if we go in to try to verify their identity through banking records, they got married and they're using a maiden name and something doesn't jive up, and so it's flagged, and we say, no, we're not going to do that. So it is not easy to get onto our account, and that's by design.
What about for casinos? Is it the same thing, or do you have a verification process that you go through like the lottery does?
I will tell you that right now Ellis does not have any online other than our website. And that same for LDC, due to the nature of gaming in New Mexico, they don't have any online outreach as well. It's something we're keeping an eye on. It's something we will eventually get into. And so the efforts that Chip make and we're watching with great interest to try to learn from.
Mike had to step away, but he told me the next question would
Okay.
be, put on your futuristic goggles. And where do you see your industry in the next 20 years? What's coming down the pipe? What do we have to look forward to? What do we have to do to prepare ourselves as counselors to help?
Yeah, I would say for us, the obvious is the move to online. So there's online sports betting now. Now through our casino, technically the sports betting is a different company. But with that move, eventually, once that's more normalized, I think then you're going to see, the push to online gaming and to kind of what he was talking about before is just making sure that everything is buttoned up and that the people who are getting on are, again, the people that are supposed to be getting on, that, again, to his point, like, the play is even more tracked. So right now at a casino, I'd probably say about 70% of the play is played on the card where we can monitor what's going on, whereas once you get it online, it's 100%, so that we can be a little more mindful about what's going on. So for the casino, that's the, probably not even 20 years out. That's the next thing is gaming online.
And we see that as well, especially via our internet sales. When I first started in the industry, obviously there were no internet sales. I remember meeting a colleague from London who told me that she had the capability of being in the back of a taxi and pulling out her cell phone and buying a lottery ticket. And I thought that was the most mind-blowing thing that I'd ever heard in my entire life. And there's no way Kentucky will ever be able to do that. And yet here we are. And we started the platform out by design very quietly. We did not market it. People just kind of discovered us by chance. And our product manager on that online channel used to refer to herself as a rounding error in terms of our overall sales, because it was a very small number. It slowly began to grow, and then the pandemic hit. And it exploded. We're seeing tremendous activity on there now, but we've also seen tremendous sales via lottery games. Our industry is changing, and I think as it relates back to where you all will be as treatment specialists, in terms of the immediacy of the game. People buying a ticket on Thursday and waiting till Saturday to find out if they've won a draw is not really appealing much anymore. Our instant games outsell our draw games 2-1 now. And games such as Mega Millions and Powerball, while being very strong brands and having tremendous name recognition, are in decline because that model is leaving. So I think immediacy is what a lot of us will start to see a lot more of, and I think that's going to relate back to the treatment model that you all are going to be with. Jimmy?
Just one last question. For those of you that are doing online providing of services, especially for that self-exclusion portion, do your websites block VPNs?
I think we're the only ones doing the ones that, that's something, Jeremy, I'm not 100% confident of.
If you don't, then someone that is self-excluded, their access isn't really stopped. It basically just generates a new network for them, and they can still access your service.
They would be blocked by identifying information. So their login information would be blocked. Their social security number is flagged in the system. Their banking information is flagged in the system, so that if they tried to come back and create a second account, first off, technically you're not supposed to be able to create a second account. Right. So there is such a hurdle just to get onto our site that for them to be able to overcome that would be extraordinarily difficult. But that's a good question on VPN, and I'll find out about that.
And frankly, I think the same for online. I mean, they get in the way. As I showed at the beginning of this, sports wagering, horse wagering. Before you come to a simulcast area, there's a few races going on. You might be able to, if you really worked at it, make a wager every few minutes. I do play. I am not allowed to play at my own house. But if you think I have a TVG account, I do. I won't say that when we're racing that I don't make it the occasional bet, but it's easy. And when you go on, there's dozens of races. You can make a bet every couple of minutes. The same for sports. We think about NFL and NBA, but if you go to a sports wagering website, you can bet on sumo and cricket and English. I mean, there are wagers that you can make. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Oscars over and over again. The discussions that you were just having with Chip, I'm not a computer expert. I do like what has happened as far as facial recognition to help us find customers, and if they have self-evicted, keep them from coming in. That is something that is beginning to help us as far as being able to keep a real database of people. My employees are human. They're going to miss on a busy night. Somebody can sneak in, and they may not get caught. having that availability to have a system that can actually identify them helps us in physically, but online, we're just learning how to make sure that we can restrict access. And it's something that frankly is one of the reasons we haven't quite gotten that far yet. I mean, online gaming for us really is ADW, and when we want to go in, we want to do it correctly. And there's just a lot of back issues as how to identify people and what can they do to bypass things that we really need to team with really online experts as opposed to gaming experts and determine how can we block all those holes.
Yeah, I'd say for ours, while we're not there yet, what the process will eventually be is once we get online, to create an online account, we'll also create for us what's a Caesar's Reward account. And then in our database, we go through a probable combines list every week. And so if we find two accounts that look like it's the same information, we look at it a little more. And then if one of those happens to be responsible gaming, but the other one's not, once we combine it, it defaults to responsible gaming, and at that point, they would be excluded online. That would be kind of how we've talked about the process, even though we are years away from that. But that will be essentially how our process works.
There was a question from the back. Did someone have?
I had a question for Chip.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about just in the stores, do you check IDs for ages to buy the tickets and things like that?
That's an excellent point. We do have our not 18, no way, no play program there that you are supposed to be over the age of 18 in order to buy or cash a lottery product. Stores, it is incumbent upon stores to manage that along the lines as they would a tobacco or an alcohol-based program. When we do get complaints from somebody about underage sales to minors, those are immediately investigated by our security personnel to find out what happened there. But retailers know that they have to make sure that the people that they're selling to are over the age of 18, because their license could be in jeopardy otherwise.
Is that concept something that in the near future could be used as a way to check for those who are trying to abstain?
To Dr. Barrett's earlier point, it's a fantastic concept. For the rubber to meet the road would be very, very difficult. Picture yourself at a C-store. You got 6 people in front of you. You just want to get your checks mixed and get out the door. You know, is that clerk who may not be there in 3 months going to take information and try to scan a driver's license or manually enter driver's license into a terminal to try to find out what's going on there? It's just going to be difficult.
It seems to me in the world in our world of technology, it seems to me real easy to step up to a counter and put my license to a machine and let it scan it while she's doing something else and come back and it's already scanned it and told her, yes, I can, or no, I can't.
Now, I'll tell you what we are seeing happen, and the technology is available as it relates to our vending machines. So you've probably seen the big vending machines that we have where you can print tickets and things like that. There is in development the technology where you have to scan a driver's license before you are able to use that device. Any lottery vending machine in Kentucky has to operate by statute under what we call the line of sight rule. It has to be in a line of sight of a human working at that store so that if a kid comes in and tries to monkey with it or something like that, you can tell them to beat it and get lost. To try to make that more applicable, there is a move towards some of that technology to get people to scan a driver's license before they would actually be able to buy something. I can tell you there is concern from a consumer standpoint of how are consumers going to feel about that. Everybody has a driver's license. No, not everybody. Yeah, right. Not everybody has that. You know, people are concerned about their private and their personally identifiable information being out there, and now they're scanning a driver's license, and it's just, you know, would it work in that sense? Yes. What will the consumer reaction to that be? Nobody really knows. But long story short with your question, that vending machine technology is currently under development where those driver's licenses could be scanned. Because if you look on the back of a more current driver's license, at the bottom quarter of it, there's what looks like a QR code almost at the bottom of that. There's problems in getting standards for being able to do that among all states, but that is basically a QR code on the back of your license that you could scan. Having that scannable at a vending machine before somebody would be able to use it is something that is under development.
That's a good point, because with the increase in real IDs, it makes it easier for us to scan. I know back in the day of going in, and I know remembers that, you know, you go see at the security book and there'd be a book of IDs that's this thick and dog-eared. Well, now with the standardization and those QR codes, it makes it a lot easier for us to recognize those guests as well. And it makes that kind of scanning available. It makes that technology easier for us to access and actually accomplish it.
And even someone who doesn't have a driver's license these days has an ID. And if they want to buy a lottery ticket, they'll be given an ID.
A lot of people, the majority of people do, yes. I wouldn't want to overgeneralize it, but the majority of people, yes.
An interesting point is casino entry is still 21.
Yes. For
and
Indiana.
Purchase of a lottery ticket is 18. And purchase of a pari-mutuel wagering ticket is 18.
It is 18.
Does anybody know what the age limit is for charitable gaming?
16. For charitable gaming?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is an age limit.
You are correct. It's 0. A day-old baby could play bingo if they so choose. The legal prescription is they cannot receive a gift. They have to be paid off in a gift that costs no more than $10, or is the equivalent of $10 or less. But they can play. They just, what they win is where the restriction is. I want to thank our panel. We have zipped through this time, and appreciate them being here, and
Thank you.
thank you for what you've done.